In Berserk, the Black Swordsman Arc is chronologically after the Golden Age arc. Here we finally get the explanation for everything that happened, but not without suffering. Unlike in the previous arc, we get to know Guts intimately from the first page, since the moment he was born. Certain aspects of Guts have always been part of him, like how reckless he is in battle or how cold he can be. But here we get the reason behind some dislikes and traits. We must first look at his relationship with Gambino, his father figure. Gambino doesn't treat him like a person, much less like a child. The mercenaries around the camp avoid him, claiming he's a bad omen, given the way they found Guts as a baby. When his adoptive mother dies, they also blame him, even though she died from a disease. At this time, trouble increases for Guts as Gambino blames him for the death of Shisu. After the first time he cuts Gambino, Guts clings to a sword, hoping the blade can protect him from everything. Worst of all, Guts has a life event that changes his perspective of another person's touch, and the relationships Guts builds with others. He's R-worded when he was a child, and thanks to Gambino, who accepted payment for it. Thus, his distaste for people's touch. Victims interviewed 1 year after the R-word reported that most continued to experience some sexual dysfunction, especially fear of sex or difficulty with arousal or desire. As I briefly mentioned in the first video, this is why I think the first scene with the demon is out of character. It also seems some kind of phobia or symptom of PTSD, and that is not easily overcome. Other symptoms have been reported include several things, but among them, PTSD and phobias. Perhaps Casca helped him overcome it, but it's the only time we see him be intimate with someone else other than Casca. Thus, I deem it out of character. Miura has also admitted in an interview that I'd hardly thought any of it out at first. I really hadn't come up with the idea of the Band of the Hawk at all. Aside from the monster-slaying Black Swordsman, I had this idea that it'd be easy to give him something to fight if I added an element of revenge to it. And that was about it. Miura also said that, until Volume 3, all I had in mind was that it would be a story about anger. I decided I would just focus on expressing anger and hope I'd find something to work with. This doesn't take away from the story for me, but it justifies the scene with the demon. After the incident with Donovan, Guts is in denial about who Gambino truly is. It's no coincidence that Guts gets more proficient with a sword after this incident. Some victims' responses are to be violent with the aggressor. You May Destroy Me has explored this with an open end brilliantly. Except with Guts, he seemed to have embraced the violence by killing Donovan instead of confronting Gambino. The victim appears to integrate the experience and restore her sense of competence, but does not. As with other stress responses, for many victims of sexual abuse, there can be long-term residual symptoms. Feelings of anger may appear. His competence seems to be restored when he embraces the sword and kills Donovan. Fighting just became his coping mechanism. Individuals were reported to develop mechanisms that were protective against further exposure to trauma, but prevented reintegration and could lead to diminished self-esteem. Donovan and Gambino have broken far more than what the sword can protect. Thus, his dislike for other people's touch, and his difficulty to trust other people. So I have no sympathy for him when he's crippled, unable to do what he loves. it was very satisfying to see him stumble upon Guts' sword. Once again, Guts exhibits the competence of protecting himself against a threat, but furthers his suffering. Despite all his evil actions, Gambino is the only person close to a family he ever has, except for Shizu. Gambino hindered Gus's trust in other people, scarring him physically and emotionally. After the Black Swordsman Arc, it's nice to know that Guts is not a male tough protagonist for the sake of being tough. He's the way that he is because violent life events molded him into who he is. Due to his suffering, it's heartwarming to see his evolution when he enters the Band of the Hawk. I'm also glad that his growth wasn't something that happened overnight. Guts earned his place in the group slowly. Understandably, he wasn't comfortable at first. In the Band of the Hawk, Guts has the opportunity to discover himself beneath all the trauma. Not a single soul knows what he had to go through in his life. It's a clean slate. Although it's a rocky beginning due to Griffith's superiority complex, soon Guts realizes how the Band of the Hawk is different. To begin with, they're all young, which amazes Guts. Then strangers are kind to him, claiming he must celebrate the group's victories. His relationship with his subordinates evolves into admiration and friendship, shown to us in his interactions with Gaston and those in the Raiders unit. After everything he had to go through in his life, this is the right approach for Guts' character to grow. Despite his intentions, Griffith, along with Casca and the Band of the Hawk, gave Guts a home. When the band becomes the White Phoenix Knights, it also seems too good to be true for everyone. Characters like Gaston and Corcus dream about having their own lives separate from bloodshed. In royal events, women approach them, they're wealthy enough to live a comfortable life. It's all too unreal. And if it seems unreal in Berserk, it is. It's not happening. Even though he found his place in the world, Guts finds an unexpected thorn in his path. Griffith doesn't see the Band of the Hawk as his friends. His friends are only his equals, and he doesn't look at either Casca or Guts like that. This moment is the first time Guts sees Griffith's superiority complex in action. Guts is disappointed because he thought he had finally found a home. Perhaps thinking he's undeserving of a family and stability, Guts seeks a path of his own so he can claim to be Griffith's equal. For good or for bad, Guts manages to free himself from the shackles that Griffith set upon him. This action feels natural for Guts, who has always fought for his place in the world. At this time, he and Casca also become close. Dare I say, they started falling in love here, maybe also trying to assert his independence to show her he's worthy of her, since he's well aware of her platonic crush on Griffith. Everyone is well aware. I think he wanted to prove to Griffith and Casca, but also to himself, that he could find his path and dream, that he was strong enough to do it alone. Little does he know how much his absence affected the Band of the Hawk. When he sees them again, he's the same man for all we know. He continued with the mercenary life, but found independence and honed his skills the best way he could. During the time away from the band, perhaps Guts realized how much he missed them, especially Casca. So for someone who has shipped them long before they got involved, it's so satisfying to see them get intimate. And their sexy scene is not just that. It's a scene where Guts overcomes his past, dealing with his trauma and telling it for the first time to someone. He's being emotionally and physically intimate with Casca, opening up to her like he never did with anyone else in his entire life. After rescuing Griffith, their relationship begins to fall apart because of Casca's feelings towards Griffith. But it's something Guts doesn't give up that easily, asking her to stay with him. Of course, none of those options come to fruition thanks to the Eclipse. I've seen people dislike using the term strong female characters. Of course, all characters should be strong, which means they are complex or have an active presence in the narrative. Strong female characters just denote a difference from female characters who are cliches like the helpless princess or the tavern wench. Often, female characters are objectified in one way or another, much like in the tropes I mentioned previously, existing as devices to the main character rather than as actual characters. Although the warrior woman is also a trope, it depends on how it's handled by the writer. Casca is a strong female character, and not because of her sword. Miura created Casca with sensitivity, ensuring she was like a real woman instead of a flat warrior woman. She's grumpy, a leader, and a fighter, susceptible to Griffith's manipulation because she loves him. Casca can be flawed and shy without losing all the other traits. Especially given the date releases for the chapters, it was refreshing to see a man create a woman like Casca in a dark fantasy setting. Like everyone in the Band of the Hawk, Casca was someone who admired Griffith from the start. He gave her the first opportunity to defend herself against the cruel world around her. This in itself was enough to spark admiration. Then, like Guts, Casca found a way to be safe by holding a sword and gaining a family in the Band of the Hawk. When Guts arrives, Casca immediately dislikes him, seeing Griffith act irrationally for the first time. She always admired him for being strategic, and now he was acting recklessly to force Guts into the band. Casca doesn't understand that because Guts excites Griffith due to his skills and personality. She might have felt jealous that she never made Griffith behave that way. Guts' recklessness also infuriates Casca, and rightfully so, because he not only jeopardizes himself but also his companions. As a leader, she can help but despise Guts' actions. In this sense, they are kind of opposites. Casca has her shit together while Guts doesn't give a fuck. Griffith's preference for Guts in these disputes also stirs her when she can't understand what Griffith truly wants. Someone who will do anything for him even if it means their companions' deaths. All that changes when both she and Guts witness Griffith claiming that the Band of the Hawk are not his friends, not his equals. I think Casca always knew Griffith thought that way, given they knew each other for so long. She also had this unhealthy admiration for him, which led to a separation between them. Him, a lonely godly figure, and Casca, a faithful servant. Like Guts, this stops her from living her own life of her free will, except she can't break free from Griffith's manipulative grasp like Guts. Griffith's imprisonment forced Casca to be independent of him. Of course, coming from someone whose life depended on his decisions, Casca doesn't take this change too well. Although she saves the Band of the Hawk, it takes a toll on her. Berserk once again deals with mental illness, shocking yet realistically portraying depression. She doesn't eat or sleep. Casca only thinks of surviving another day, but only for the Band of the Hawk, dreaming of rescuing Griffith and Guts' return. When she can't take it any longer in Guts' presence, She tries to unalive herself for being tired and trusting Guts with the band of the Hawk and Griffith's rescue. Mirroring the time when she fainted on the battlefield, Guts saves her. They're both different people now. Guts is more mature and she's fond of him at this point. After all the sweat they broke, they unload their problems on each other. While Guts opens up about his past, Casca blames him in a mindless rage. It's a scene where they lick each other's wounds. They are what they need in life, a haven. If Berserk's world was fair, they would have gone to a cottage to live out the rest of their lives in peace. But Miura said, no, no, no. As a woman, I must talk about this scene. I'm pretty sure many young men read and still read Berserk. There's so much misinformation about women's bodies that I thought Miura deserved extra points for including this scene. It's rare for a woman to faint and have a fever due to period, but it happens. Sometimes my migraines make me want to crawl in bed all day, and I have paracetamol. Casca doesn't. So it's realistic how Casca reacted, and I'm pretty sure Miura did his research. The scene with Guts is sweet and made me care more about them. Guts acknowledging how hard it must be to be a woman sometimes. It was wholesome. A rare, wholesome moment in Berserk. I just gotta say that no woman, on her period or not, would sit on the grass or dirt without a cloth between her bum and the ground. I was sensing an infection brewing in her bits. The whole scene, I was thinking how uncomfortable she must have felt. Griffith was not normal from the start, calculating every moment. In the Golden Age arc, he appears first looking at Guts, fight like he's a plaything for him to acquire. The way he recruits Guts proves that much, as he claims, "You'll be mine." And his wicked smile is even akin to a snake. He looks at people like they're his to collect and serve his higher purpose of becoming a king. He's the focus of one of the main themes of Berserk, which is one should be careful on how to fulfill one's dream, lest you lose yourself. A dream might have a nefarious hold on us. His obsession with his goal blurs the line of morality, driving him to do unspeakable things. He's willing to do anything to achieve the castle he always wanted. In the process, Griffith forgets about the people around him, suppressing any friendly feelings, for they are not worthy of his love. He even disregards the band of the Hawk, using them to achieve his ends, no matter how many corpses he leaves behind. In a way, Griffith used Guts' trauma to his advantage, making him his sword on the battlefield. Although Guts' recklessness is part of who he is as a trauma response previously discussed, Griffith uses this to his advantage. It's no coincidence that Guts is the commander of the Raiders, which by definition is those who attack an enemy in their territory. Guts' recklessness probably won Griffith many battles. After Guts leaves, Griffith throws all the progress he made down the drain when he seeks Charlotte, looking for some small victory and comfort. He could have been king if only he had the patience, because Charlotte would wait for him, no matter how many evil deeds he made. His downfall only proves that he was a flawed human, even if he repudiated that part of him. His superiority complex blinded him from seeing the people around him. Although some of his actions stem from a struggle to control everyone, the Band of the Hawk loved him nonetheless. He had it all and reached higher than any group of mercenaries could ever dream. His inability to acknowledge the importance of the band was the very thing that made him fall. He had these people for granted, like soldier figures on a war map. When Guts proves him wrong, he can't take it. It's the first time he's rejected, and he doesn't take it well. And I think there wasn't a hint of romantic feelings for Guts. Casca herself admits that Griffith never wanted anyone that bad in the band. Oh my god, I have Griffith's hair. Oh my god. I mean, he has more volume, but you know, a girl can have it all. Seeking comfort and control in Charlotte, he wastes all he builds his entire life. Even after his rescue, Griffith can't talk or move nor pick up a sword. From what we can tell from Guts' expression, his beauty has left him too. When all seems lost, the Behelit finds Griffith. Nosferatu Zod gave Guts a prophecy about this very event. If you can be said to be a true friend to this man, then take heed. When his ambition collapses, death will pay you a visit, a death you can never escape. The meaning of the prophecy is quite straightforward. Once Griffith is desperate enough to call the god hand and sacrifice, Guts will be paid a visit by death because he'll be branded. Regarding the collapse of Griffith's ambition, the scenes before he activates the Behelit are quite telling. His body is beyond healing, his beauty gone for good, as well as his autonomy. When he imagines a regular life with Casca and her son, named Guts, Griffith would rather die than not fulfill his dream of becoming a king. The Eclipse is simply the culmination of Griffith's ambition. It has haunted the reader and the characters we love since the previous arc. We now know what Griffith has done that is so despicable and made him Guts' target of revenge. The Eclipse is the event that shatters Guts' character growth and Casca's integrity and sanity. The work she had before up until rescuing Griffith is for nothing. She had symptoms of depression even displayed at its fullest when Guts returns. She's also R-worded by demons, which I think Miura did to add to her losing her voice and personality. It was just too much for her, and honestly, for anyone. Editing Ray here, so I don't agree with the consistent use of on Casca and her constant nudity in the process, because at this point Miura is using it as the only dramatic device to make the reader feel empathy towards the characters. As I read it, it felt like a cheap trick to make us feel sorry for Casca. Of course, we felt sorry for Casca, but it's the only dramatic device to make us feel this way. It's overused and unnecessary. And yes, it's a grim fantasy story, but that doesn't justify it. There's plenty of other dark stuff that can happen. All of Guts' suffering from his past comes alive in a nightmarish way. He's losing everyone he loves to terrifying monsters, all thanks to Griffith wanting to recover a smidge of his former grandeur. He takes petty revenge for Guts leaving him and for Casca's and Guts' involvement. It is despicable to see him use Casca to get back at Guts, like he's taking her as is. It's nauseating. Both Casca and Guts are saved, introducing a new world-building concept. Causality. According to causality, what Zod, the Apostles, and the God Hand didn't see coming was the Skull Knight rescuing Guts and Casca. Demons are not omniscient beings.
この世界には人の運命を司る何らかの超越的な律、神の手が存在するのだろうか。少なくとも人は自らの意志さえ自由にはできない。
This quote addresses that humanity is controlled through God's will. The God hand don't control it, although they might know how events unfold, but their God, the idea of evil, is the one pushing all the strings. So what causality means is that there are predetermined events and actions. Griffith's life was shaped for him to become femto. It's worth mentioning that the idea of evil is not 100% canon, and we don't know its intent or how causality truly works. There are two ways to interpret them being saved by Skull Knight. One, he's saving them because it's part of causality. Guts and Casca surviving is also a part of destiny. And two, he's saving them because he fights against causality, has Guts and Casca will after the Eclipse. Either way, it's an element of low magic system. We can only theorize how things truly work. For now, that's all on causality. I'm focusing on what the manga gives us, since this is a review, not a theory. In the end, although they're saved, demons will persecute Guts and Casca due to the brand of sacrifice. So far, this is my favorite arc. We get to see why the characters act the way they do and what they want and need. Miura did take his time setting up this revenge arc. The author also dealt well with the exploration of mental illness, making it a growth point rather than a negative trait. Berserk is not just a big dude swinging a big sword. Overall, this arc is a very satisfying answer to the Black Swordsman Arc, one that pains us all. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.